Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of Rewriting History, where we challenge the way we look at the past. I'm your host, and today, on the occasion of Indigenous Peoples Day, we're going to explore an excerpt from Chapter 1 of A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. This excerpt takes us on a thought-provoking journey as Howard Zinn describes why he chooses to tell the story of Columbus's arrival from the viewpoint of the Arawaks. He also sheds light on the idea of inevitable taking of sides, which arises from the selection and emphasis in history. Let's dive into the passage where Zinn begins with a journal entry by Bartolome de los Casas, a young priest who witnessed the conquest of Cuba. Quote, "Thus husbands and wives were together only once every 8 or 10 months, and when they met, they were so exhausted and depressed on both sides. They ceased to procreate. As for the newly born, they died early because their mothers, overworked and famished, had no milk to nurse them. And for this reason, while I was in Cuba, 7,000 children died in 3 months. Some mothers even drowned their babies from sheer desperation. In this way, husbands died in the mines, wives died at work, and children died from lack of milk. And in a short time, this land which was so great, so powerful and fertile, was depopulated. My eyes have seen these acts so foreign to human nature, and now I tremble as I write." When he arrived on Hispaniola in 1508, Las Casas says, there were 60,000 people living on this island, including the Indians, so that from 1494 to 1508, over 3 million people had perished from war, slavery, and the mines. Who in future generations will believe this? I myself, writing it as a knowledgeable eyewitness, can hardly believe it. End quote. This heartbreaking account paints a grim picture of the early interactions between European settlers and the indigenous people of the Americas. It's a history that often remains obscured in traditional narratives. Zinn goes on to discuss how this devastating history is often presented to us. When we read history books, especially those provided to children, the story of Columbus's arrival is often portrayed as a heroic adventure with no mention of bloodshed. But Zinn challenges this perspective. He cites Samuel Eliot Morison, a distinguished historian who, in his book, Christopher Columbus, Mariner, acknowledges the cruel policy initiated by Columbus and his successors, which resulted in complete genocide. What's striking here is Morison's acknowledgement of the atrocities followed by his quick shift to other aspects of Columbus's life. Zinn highlights that this approach of mentioning the truth briefly and moving on to more important matters is a form of ideological choice. According to Zinn, it serves to justify the horrors committed in the name of progress. This learned sense of moral proportion, where mass murder and atrocities are downplayed, continues to shape our understanding of history in our world. Zinn argues that history is often told from the perspective of governments, conquerors, and leaders, and their actions are presented as representing the entire nation. This viewpoint can obscure the suffering, exploitation, and conflicts that existed. As we wrap up this eye-opening passage from Howard Zinn's work, A People's History of the United States, I want to leave you with this thought. History is not a monolithic narrative, but a complex tapestry of experiences, perspectives, and interests. Thank you for joining us today on this special episode of Rewriting History. Let us remember the importance of examining the past from different viewpoints and not accepting the memory of states as our own. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking the truth.